Composing gloves here, and today we're checking out the BA-1. I have a track here that is 100% the BA-1. The only things that are not the BA-1 are the kick and the snare. This up here. Everything else is the BA-1. I want to go through the sounds I used, and if you're curious about listening to the full track, it's called Stepping Into the Portal. Let's just hear a little bit of it. So here's the intro. I really like the intro. It's kind of like this mystic opening, like, going for that retro wave vibe. Yeah, really, really nice. We eventually build up to a lead that leads us into our drop, which will get us to our first main theme. And the main theme actually is kind of introduced here. There's two big themes. So very nice. We hit our theme. Things are going. It's cool. I dig how the bass is moving along. We come out of this thing with a really nice chord progression into the outro. I really like this section. I'm super happy with how it turned out. Here it is. Yeah, so just fun. Just a fun synth. It excels, I think, at this kind of music, like older, retro wave style music. Sounds totally fantastic. You could also get some really groovy sounds out of this. Just really, really does well. So let's go ahead. Let's dive into the sound decisions and how that sort of influenced the writing. Because you'll notice here, I have a bunch of tracks, and this just sort of nests the automation for that particular patch. Normally, you would put the MIDI here, but you might notice I like to fly between my MIDI like this and have things that are harmonically relevant next to each other, so I can do things like write the chords that I'm using and stuff on the top. And this just it's just a workflow thing I like. So I have a gigantic harmony bus is what I called it. I'm not sure what to call it, where all the MIDI for that goes here. And a couple elements did break off like drums and stuff, but pretty much everything lives here. If it's somewhere else, it's probably automation except for this sub bass line. So let's just start at the top of the channel rack and sort of go down. So at the beginning, there's a lot of layering going on, just layering everywhere. We have here our first take, and nearly every single one of these sounds starts as a preset. Just so you know, the presets sound great. They're well organized. They just work really well. And our first sound here is this chord patch. And this is being automated on and off at different sections. And you're going to find that the synth itself is super easy to grasp. It's not a complicated synthesizer. It's not one of those things where there's a million options. You've got oscillators, you've got a filter with an envelope, which is probably the thing you're going to touch the most. You've got some FM, an LFO, an ability to sidechain, and so, which I wound up not using for reasons. I actually have another video on the music marketing channel if you want to find out more about why. And FL is just a little more hard to do. In other DAWs, this is a more useful control. And then we've got our effects section, a battery life thing, which makes it sound like older, and then like an output and a randomization. So it's a super straightforward synth, especially if you're someone who already knows synthesis. You're going to open this up and need no manual. You'll just immediately know how to do everything. And if you're new, this is really nice because you open it up and things are simple enough that if you move a knob, it's not going to be the end of the world. Like crazy sounds aren't going to start coming out of it. It's going to be reasonable. Things are going to be pretty predictable. So things that I wound up doing quite a bit of, changing envelopes and adjusting effects. it's going to be most of working with the synth, unless you're creating patches from scratch, in which case you're going to pick like your bass and all that stuff. And I found that just starting with the presets and having most of that already decided was just a little more inspiring, and then occasionally mingling it. So some patches got a lot of mingling, some got less. Mostly in any automation generally had to do with the envelope in the filter. So here at the beginning, like there's some filter and attack automation. So you can hear it open up, wah, 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 wah. That's the attack moving up, and then the filter itself's opening up how bright the patch is. So that's the initial patch. Writing with these sounds, since they're pretty simple and very periodic, they lend well to chords for similar reasons that, like, classical guitar sounds great with really complicated chords, as opposed to like distorted guitar, which has really complicated waveforms, so it doesn't do that great with chords. Well, here we've got a synth, very periodic waveform, so you can get a little crazier with your chords and have full triads going and things like that. It'll sound pretty nice. So that's the first patch. We have this pad. There's actually some layers to the pad. Some pads are made to have a longer tail, and then another one is made to be just a little bit tighter on the envelope, because you see how long this attack is. So this will make it kind of hard to write MIDI that lands with the melody. So I actually have some separate pads for that. And these all form a layer. So we've got like a layer here. Here's another one. Just some light adjustments, mostly for timing reasons. I want it to sound like the same thing, just some timing differences. We've got another one. Notice they're all the same preset. I'm literally just adjusting these so that they work together as like a team a little bit more. And when I want a longer sort of echoey thing, I have these. These ones are muted. You don't see muted notes very often in FL, but I wound up muting these because I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep them or not. And there's actually a melody right here with these 3 lead sounds. If we go ahead and mute the main chord sound. Yeah, so they're all coming together to sort of do their thing. And the timing differences is the reason why there's several versions of this. By the way, controls I didn't mention. Normally global controls you just sort of don't worry about too often, but the poly controls up here with these dots, and there's a super important one to be aware of. You're gonna want to know polyphonic mode is up there. So anyways, yeah, so that's what these are doing. They're just layers of all the same patch, and with just some micro adjustments. We've got here our at some point I was like, man, it would be dope if I had these like little arps, these little bell things. So that's what these guys are. Let's go ahead and mute these out so we only have it. What else is coming through here? This guy? Good enough. There's still something coming through, but not a big deal. So yeah, that's what these are. These are just going through the chord at the time. I didn't label these ones, but I started labeling them as I went on. And yeah, they just sort of go through an ARP, and they've been pushed and shoved into this little space sort of randomly. Some of them are metrically precise. Others are just sort of randomly put in. And then I just select the notes and sort of squeeze them as necessary. And yeah, so that's what those are. So those are going through, and then on the chain themselves, it's actually just the default effects right inside of here. The effects, we've got a delay here. It sounds fantastic, a reverb. You will notice that in some sounds, I've got like a spaced out on some things, acting pretty much as a delay and a verb. That's what spaced out is. And some stereo placement with Q3, a couple stereo placement ideas going on in here. But anyways, yeah, so that's what's going on there. That's the little ARP sound. I thought it was cool. It was a fun patch. This one, I believe I did mangle, if I recall. This is the patch it started as. And then I just sort of went to town changing things. Obviously, you want a very fast attack on your filter and a fast decay. That's going to give you that wah kind of a thing. If these are too long, like a long decay, you get a big old thing. Ah, crud. I forgot that's the reset button. There was a jump cut here. There are 2 things I want to tell you really quick that I found a little confusing at first. There's no obvious undo button. And if you click this is the reset button. So you'll end up clearing your patch. As you can see, I did earlier. In order to undo, it supports Control Z. So if your keyboard focuses on this, like you've clicked it, and you hit Control Z, it will go back to what you had. But this I found a little confusing. So you might want, I would encourage an undo button at some point. I think that would be kind of more obvious. This just says to me undo, but it's reset. I'm not sure what a better symbol for reset would be though. So you got me, but I've had that happen to me a couple times, and it just so happened I tried Control Z. I'm sure other users that might not occur to them, and so you might just be like, well, there goes my patch, and then you might have to reload your project or something, but not know that that's an option. And there's also resize, which is kind of nice. I tend to like my plugins bigger. They're on the screen, see them, and then I close them when I'm done. And also if you're working with different resolutions, that's an important thing to be able to do. So anyways, yeah, so that's that patch, and let's keep going here. So coming down here, we've got our lead. Just some fun stuff, and moving right along here. Let's come down to our bass layers. Now this patch here has an interesting property. If I play two notes that are far apart, it'll glide, because up here I'm in monophonic mode. But if this glide is short, you heard how it was discrete, like it was going through notes. If I have it at a shorter value, it will be continuous and go up. So that is an interesting control. And that's what I have going on this patch right here. Let's look through here some more. So in the presets, one that I kept coming back to was this Michael Oakley synthwave pack. Is just full of bangers. There's so many good things in here, so definitely worth checking out. From here, we've got our lead. Now these are our lead groups. Now the lead groups, they work together to form a patch, and there is a speaker for lo-fi stuff. If you wanted to sound extra lo-fi, and the battery can get a little weird too. These were things I often actually wound up turning off to some extent, because they were just a little too much for the particular sound I was going for in this track. Here's another lead layer. Most of these layers don't sound by themselves. They work together as a unit. So if we take a look here at, for example, here's one of our groups of leads. And here is our sub bass doing its thing. Yeah, and this has the large portamento on, which is why it started out so high, because I played some high notes. And this is a glitch FL has been giving me for a while, and I'm not sure exactly why or how to get rid of it. We'll just pop open the browser. So anyways, that's going on sort of as a kick support element. And then, yeah, we've got our leads. There is another lead in here that is doing its job, but it's kind of coded in with the bass and a bunch of other stuff. And then, yeah, our two bass layers are these guys. And this one. So kind of some fun stuff going on there. Moving on through our leads, though, you can see they sort of act as a unit. And in the second part, I give them harmonically different jobs, just to keep it a little more interesting at the very end. So that's going on there. We hit our outro. This is where things like the arpeggiator comes in. And on this one, I'm using the built-in arpeggiator that's just right in FL Studio. It's not the one, I'm not even sure if there is one in here. I don't think there is. So I'm just using the MIDI one FL provides. So don't go looking for that in there. And some additional chords, some chord layers that come in. And this has a much more direct and forward sound, makes things sound a little more straightforward. And I really like how the melody comes out with these lead layers here. It's just, the layers speak for themselves. They just do so good. And that's pretty much it. There's a couple other stranger things in here going on. That's not a reference, by the way. I'm just saying they sound strange. But yeah, that's the sounds in here. They're all BA-1. I'm really stoked with how the track came out. And, you know, doing challenges like this can just be a little bit inspiring. I've never really written something like this before. And I think it just goes to show how strongly the synth pulls towards that genre. But anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Subscribe to that bell icon for future videos, and have a blessed day.